in Cambodia, there is no distinction between composing and performing. So if you perform an instrument, in a sense, you are a composer as well.
Dr. Chinary is an internationally celebrated composer who has recently earned one of the highest honors in the United States, a lifetime membership to the American Academy of Arts and Letters. The 77-year-old Cambodian-American musician and professor began in May his membership in the 250-person societies of architects, artists, composers, and writers. The group administers awards and prizes to foster, assist, and sustain excellence in American literature, music, and art. In 1964, Dr. was a high school student in Phnom Penh when he won a scholarship to study clarinet at Manhattan School of Music in New York. Since then, he has found his place at the heart of American freedom and creativity. He says he owes his success to his Cambodian identity and a childhood on rural farms.
It's the Khmer culture. It's what I learned from the rice field that I spoke of, what touches me the most. And I'm proud to say that I'm a Cambodian.
A formal induction ceremony in New York will take place in May 2021, delayed by a year because of the coronavirus pandemic. VOA has recently visited Dr. Ong's San Diego home to talk with him about his award-winning compositions, the Cambodian soul and Khmer culture, and what it means to pursue the art. Dr. Chinary Cambodian-American, arrived in the US in 1964 and now award-winning music composer and also professor at University of California, San Diego. I'm going to start with your root. How was your childhood? What was it like? Did you know that you liked music from early on?
In retrospect, you are referring to over 7 decades ago.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's sweet. It is positive, the childhood, yeah. Although my family was very poor, they was not able to support me, and they gave me away to my grandparents, which I was pleased to be there too. I was born in Prelovia, Srok Prekrabah and Katakau. At one point, my grandfather and I was at the side of the house, and we saw a bunch of musicians of the folk instrument pass by at the gate, and my grandparent called them in and asked them to play a few songs for us, and they did. And I remember he said, "How about Kasrai Kahom, the red scarf? How about this? How about Sampong?" and so forth. It was so breathtaking. That was I probably was maybe 3 years old or something like that. And I was really touched by that, and I was overwhelmed. To me, it sounded like heaven. You had to pay attention to youngsters. 2 or 3 years old children, they are falling into a very important situation here. What touched them first tend to stick later on in life.
Right before you decided to apply for this scholarship, the Asia Foundation, to come to the US, you know for sure that you want to do music.
At one point, I was good in math and also in music. My late brother and I were sitting there at the fence of the school, and we were debating whether or not I should go to music or to go to math. He's the one who actually decided for me. He said, "How about how about you study music? It's much more fun," and so forth. And so, I had to flip a coin.
Do you blame him for that now?
No.
50 years later?
I love it. I love it.
Okay,
I think.
Pa pa ta 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 vida. In Cambodia, that was probably in the 50s when I was around elementary school around that time. And my brother and I, before we each evening before we went to sleep. We sort of lie in the bed together and then try to sing, make some tune, and banging the on the bed, and it's really worked out so well. But then all of a sudden we stopped and said, "Gee, you know, there must be somewhere in some other country people probably invented music notation or something like that." And so that was the beginning. That was the notion. That was the beginning of wanting to notate, to be able to notate what you're hearing.
I arrived in New York City in January 1964. I was exactly 21 years old. And I won a grant to pursue my study in music, specifically to study clarinet. Later, I got a PhD. I got a Doctor of Musical Arts in music composition. So the technicality, the craftsmanship that I learned and gathered in the West could be the engine to propel my music. But the spirit, the driver, and all that is Cambodian. Yeah.
You get a shot of this photo that I have in my viola case here. See.
Okay, my name is Susan Ung. I have been married to Chinnery for a long time. We met in January 1978 at Northern Illinois University. I was studying viola there, and he was teaching music composition. This instrument you can find it all over Asia, actually. This particular body is Chinese. The Cambodian ones tend to be made out of coconut shells or something round. The bow, actually, though, was made by a Cambodian maker. So it's kind of a Cambodian bow with a Chinese instrument. It's sort of a combination. My interest at that time was already in Asian music, but then when I met Chinnery and started to learn a little bit about his background, I also became interested in improvising with Asian instruments with our friends, Chinnery together.
I put a little tail a little bit for Susan to do. Okay, so you actually create another snake form. All right, let me see what you can do. Okay, so one of you want to come step forward and see what you can do? See?
I know who wants to do it.
We have a very fine musician here.
He has written pieces for me which are collaborative because I am singing and I am speaking and I am shouting and I am acting while I am playing. And he can give me something on paper, but then it has to become me, of course. So in a way, they're collaborative efforts. After the music is on the page, then there's something of me in there. At the time that I met him, in 1978, you know, the Khmer Rouge still had a good grip on his family. He hadn't heard from his family all that time. Around the time that people started coming to refugee camps, 1980, we heard about that. We were working on getting refugees out of the refugee camps, our relatives. So the beginning of our relationship had a lot to do with what happened to Cambodia.
In 1964, when you first got to New York, US, that was before the Khmer Rouge.
correct.
So your memory of Cambodia probably not of the war back then, but then now after the war, now, what is Cambodia to you?
During the time, there was stability, peace, and all that. The cultural ecology of the nation at the time was very well balanced.
So about now, go back to that question of how do you see Cambodia now?
Looking at through the lens of the culture or the arts or the performing art or the music and so forth, we are the artists are the driving force right now. Very, very strong, both inside and outside of Cambodia globally, very, very strong. The outside of Cambodia communities and all that have been very, very supportive. They go out their way to support their children education and especially in the art, performing art, the tradition of the temples, for example, and so forth. And inside it is the whole, it is a movement in itself. Specifically, there's a number of institutions in the art that have fostered or contribute to the livelihood and to the development. But in particular, the Cambodian living arts, Khmer appears to the region to become one of the most prominent organizations to foster that.
So you've been living here more than 50 years now in the US.
Yeah, it's like a dream.
It's like a dream, right? And I assume you went back home a few times. You visit Cambodia.
Not a few times.
Many times. Right?
No, many times.
So
yeah.
I just want to find out, since you've been away from your country, visiting many times, when you hear the word Cambodia, what comes to your mind?
I think very much the people, the art, the culture, a sense of spirituality and tradition. At the same time, I recognize the urban situation has been exploded with all sorts of commercial tendency and so forth. That has impacted urban young generation quite bad.
Thank you.
Medicine or anything?
No, I'm okay. Yeah.
In the early part of our relationship, I saw that he was very inside of himself and very quiet and very traumatized because, you know, he was getting letters and it's very sad when people are writing you and saying, please help, please help, please help, and there's only so many people you can help. I have to say that his salary was quite low. He was a junior professor. I was a grad student. We had no money. We were getting churches involved. We were, you know, maxing out credit cards that we didn't really have any business taking out. Our phone bills were $400 a month, and, you know, calling Thailand, and it took us decades to get out of debt after that. And those relatives were coming and living with us for, you know, short periods of time as they were coming over, and we were learning the horrors that they had gone through. The trauma is there. I mean, the trauma in their lives, the trauma in our lives. I find that place in his music every time I play it. But many of his pieces go there, I think. He's more than likely not going to say that that's what he's doing, but I think that's what he's doing. I think he's going to some place very deep, and that's where he is most expressive from that space of pain and trauma through his music.
ដើរនៅពេលល្ងាចមួយតង្ហែសពណាតង្ហែសពរួចនៅក្នុងពីកណាណោតភ្លេងគេលេងកន្លែងនេះហើយមកលេងកន្លែងនេះហើយលេងមកកន្លែងនេះហើយលេងកន្លែងនេះគឺអាហ្នឹងប្រហែល
Your music has been described as to have a mixture of the Eastern and Western characteristic. I want you to describe a little bit what it is. What is the nature of your music, basically?
To me, either you're a Cambodian or you're an American. Okay, I'm an American officially through naturalization. okay, បដូរសញ្ជាតិបាទ but at heart, at soul, and also my background and knowledge of the culture and the performing art and so forth really belong to the Cambodian situation here. That does not mean that I never opened the door to learn about Western music. I did. You know, I got a PhD, I got a Doctor of Musical Arts in music composition. So to answer your question, I would like to think that in spirit, my music, yes, does carry the background of the culture in Cambodia. Without that background, I wouldn't be able to compose, let's say, in the voices, the orchestral piece of mine. But without the technicality, the craftsmanship that I learned and gathered it in the West, I wouldn't be able to put the two together.
The 20-minute award-winning piece, In the Voices, was Ong's second orchestral work following a hiatus between 1974 and 1985. For some of those years, Cambodia was ruled by the Khmer Rouge, a communist regime that killed 1.7 million people and almost completely destroyed the country's rich culture. Ong turned his attention to the rescue of surviving relatives and the rebuilding of the traditions of Khmer court music.
I'm the first Cambodian and first American to win this.
In 1989, In the Voices made Ong the first American to win the prestigious Grawemeyer Award. Ong said the piece was his attempt to embrace the expressions of many cultures in a singular musical language. And he got the inspiration from a dream.
In the dream, I thought I had received an invitation to attend a ritual. And I heard the chanting about a text that this young Cambodian lady, a teenager, decided to commit suicide and left that text to her parent to set it into music, into song, funeral song, during her funeral.
You're saying that In the Voice, it was special because you express it through all kinds of instrument, Western instrument, Eastern instrument, but you tell a story of your identity, your Cambodianness, your Khmerness. So it's probably a good segue to talk about the Cambodian music industry, particularly the traditional one, with all these traditional instruments like roniet, like tro, like all that. You taught yourself how to play those instruments. But right now, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like no one is making or composing new traditional music. We only have pen piet, we have playing ka, but we don't have new traditional music that use those instruments to create new song or new music. Why? When did Cambodia stop and why?
It's a good question. I think the war did really slow down and destroy a lot of things in lives in particular, and the livelihood. The survivor decades later has still experiencing spiritual scar, and not to mention over 2 million lives was in peril and all that. But I think, go back to your question on the traditional instrument or traditional music, when did it stop? Regarding the state of composition by composing new pieces and so forth, we really don't know. And I could imagine it could be slowed down since Angkor were broken to pieces.
I mean, we've been using the same music for occasion, for example, for marriage. We use the same music. But beard, we have all these other things.
Right, and even we use less. A combination of forgotten, not knowing, or lack of interest, or it's not in demand. in terms of music industry. Look at the dance, like Tape Manorum, like Apsara and all that. They were still being choreographed and so forth, but the music, no.
But why?
Yeah. The question of why is a very tricky one, because you could spend your lifetime to prove why, and then somebody else can to prove that you're wrong.
What's your take on that?
So my take is this: is not to ask that question. It's just jump in the water and helping traditional musician, and that's why we have been working together with the CLA, which is Cambodian Living Arts, at the branch of Heritage Hub. The center itself located at the heart of Wat Bo. It's inside of Wat Bo, and I have been doing that. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was the third time that I taught the Cambodian or helped them, assist them, or guided them to come forth with new pieces.
Upstairs.
Yeah.
Chinnery distinguished professor.
Extinguished. Not yet. Not yet. You're not extinguished yet.
Here we go.
As you can see, there's not a lot of room. There's so many instruments. This has become a sort of a storage spot for a lot of the Cambodian instruments. Chinnery spent 10 years playing this, at least. Yeah, he
A long time ago, during the 80s.
During the 80s, when the refugees started coming over, and we noticed that in some of the performances, the classical court dance was dancing with the folk musicians, the wrong ensemble for the classical dance, and some of the wrong music as well, or just a little piece of the classical music, but playing in a loop, just a small phrase instead of really playing all of Apsara. They were doing a little piece or whatever. And so Chinnery decided to go back to his recordings that he has. Many of them were just, LPs, and listen. And he taught himself how to play the ranet. And he practiced hours a day. Our kids were very small at the time. Kalian was, she still had a bottle, so she was probably less than 2. And then for about 10 years, he basically taught a lot of those folk musicians the entire structure of the correct music for the dance, because Cambodian-American heritage was putting on performances all the time, and none of the masters that these guys had seen in the past had survived the war.
The prominent one is Master Chumnge. He's one of the top musicians of Phnom Penh. He's alive, and he's really well versed. He has great command in the Phnom Penh. And so I learned from him quite a bit.
Oh, okay, so yeah. And then you taught yourself quite a bit.
Yeah, that exactly. What you're referring to is the folk musicians. They were good in the Troy and in the Kim and all that, but they do not know the Phnom Penh repertoire very well. When we get together, combine together, we have to lead them. So I can play like one phrase now.
But if you practiced, it would come back.
Yes, it will come back, but it takes like 2 months or so to be able to play anything. So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And I didn't know that you spent 10 years just teaching yourself.
Yeah, he basically stopped composing during that time.
Composing and like I practice like average like 6 hours per day, for example, aside from teaching and all that. Yeah, and then also I had to do transcribing from the old cassette tape, reel to reel or cassette or recording
LPs.
and so forth.
Yeah.
And to put into music notation, and
Wow.
so it's a long process. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can we actually inspire artists, old generation, new generation, to start composing music, composing traditional music? Who are the stakeholders? What needs to happen in order for us to create an environment where artists want to create traditional music?
Aside from Cambodian living art, what Sopilin, Nekru Sopilin has been doing, she's a choreographer, dancer, teacher, and all that. She had commissioned, the Academy has commissioned composers like again Hemsepi to compose pieces for traditional instrument and so forth. Okay,
How about support from the public and the government?
We'll not be surprised that there has been some kind of program that the Ministry of Culture has been handling and so forth, but I don't have much information on that one. But one thing for sure, we are not only still lacking a creative force in terms of creation of pieces for traditional instrument and so forth, but institutions such as the Royal University of Fine Arts and so forth is lacking of instruments, of teachers. There's a number of things that ought to be nurtured.
What's happening now with the young artists who maybe they don't do new music that is completely made of traditional instrument, but they mix it with modern instrument, modern music instrument, and some people say that is not good because it's killing your own culture. Is it true?
They are taking it literally. They're going against the flow, the lack of exposure of the tradition to begin with. You cannot scream at the children and say, hey, why don't you love your culture and so forth, because no exposure to them. Okay? If they were born at 3 or 4 years old, they already start eating hamburger every day and French fry. No, I think it's finished. You know, I mean.
But then what is the Cambodian identity? Because if they are Cambodian kids living in Cambodia, making music, modern music mixed with traditional music, is their music Cambodian?
What is mixing? Mixing, those are tangible. Okay, what worries me the most is their knowledge of the tradition, their experience, their passion, their heart, and all of that. This sort of prompted me to say something else. I said that yes, we should open the door to the West to learn something, especially the good things that we think we should learn from. But we also have to stand on our culture. Let's say in the field of education, we have to figure out what do you want to say in the curriculum? What do you want to address to our children? That is the real question here. So okay, it's not train them to imitate all the time. You know, how long do you want to be a slave of any school of thought? The Buddha rejected all school of thought, and then he came up with his own school of thought. Art has to follow that somehow, because it is a self-realization which is striving for a sense of liberation.
So artists, young artists in Cambodia, you're saying to them that keep doing what you do, keep doing what you're doing, create new music, mixing all kinds of instruments you can find, as long as you understand the Cambodian culture, your own culture.
Yeah. As long as you have your feet on the ground. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not walking on the shoulder of older energy.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
that's good. Mm-hmm. How about another saying? Can culture be killed? Because if someone say that can culture be die, can culture die?
Ironically, I have say in the case of the Cambodians, also we have been so unfortunate and so forth. But it demonstrates to themselves and to the world that the resiliency does still keep rolling. The real master lied on the common people, the millions, the villages, the people themselves, who are the guardian of their own culture. It's not an art policy. It's not something mechanical that involve a lot of paperwork and involve just a small group of people Okay.
Even we have the Khmer who dedicated to destroy the culture, to erase a lot of things. Our culture still survives.
It cannot erase. We are unstable due, unfortunately, to political situation and so forth. But I hope I'm not being biased, but I strongly believe that the artists do have a hidden message to leaders. What would be most prosperous thing possible for the future of Cambodia is unity. Unification and unity, and speak the same language. It's like you play in the Phnom Penh ensemble, or you play in the symphony. If you play a different tune, you're gone. Sooner or later, it's going to collapse. There is no doubt in my mind. Yeah, I mean, I'm judging as a musician.
Western composers in this society win those awards, and he's won them all. I mean, the whole list. But you know, I don't think awards are really what you live your life for. You know, you just hope that people understand your path and appreciate it. And it's wonderful that he's a Cambodian artist that has done that. It's wonderful for Cambodians. It's wonderful for Americans. Some Cambodians, you know, don't consider him a real Cambodian because he's been in the United States since 1964. He has a perspective, though. I think there's a little bit of defensiveness on the part of some Cambodians on that. You know, I get it. He doesn't live there now. But they would learn more if they listened more.
So touching on the Cambodian identity a little bit, your daughters, 2 daughters, they were born here, they grew up here.
Right.
Do you think that they have a lot of Cambodian identity as someone who was born and live here?
No. First of all, I could blame on myself. At one point during the war, I felt so pessimistic. I really have nothing to do. I don't want to have nothing to do with the culture and all that. Kalyan, the elder daughter, she's an actress. She teaches at the California Institute for the Arts, north of Los Angeles. And she had done the research on letters that were sent during the late 70s and early 80s, mostly among our relatives. And I said, okay, would you like to see those letters? And she did. And right now, she had performed Letter from Home like 20 times. To answer your question, she is gaining the quality of being a Cambodian through art, okay, through knowledge.
Dad, I'm going to write a play. Can you tell me more about how our relatives escaped the Khmer Rouge? How did they get to America?
This is Kalyan on stage performing Letters from Home, a play about her Cambodian relatives who wrote letters to her father asking him to help them escape the Khmer Rouge genocide.
They began in 1979 and spanned over the next several years, and they were letters from my family members who were trying to get out of the refugee camps asking for my father to help them because my father was in America.
You read each letter at the fireplace and then threw them into the fire.
After 40 years, I buried the letter in the box. It just upset me to read those letters. But finally, I have faith on Kalyan because she became a capable actor.
Based in Los Angeles, the 33-year-old Cambodian-American actress earned her Master of Fine Arts in Acting from California Institute of the Arts, and she has worked with critically acclaimed theaters and opera companies such as Critically Mass Performance Group and Independent Shakespeare Company.
My noble father.
But working on such a personal project demanded more than just professional training and experience.
I felt overwhelmed because it is overwhelming and the passages were very sad, but also because I was watching my father finally deal with it. And my father never talked about it.
Letters from Home is a 90-minute multimedia solo performance based on the letters from her father and his emotional journey dealing with what happened.
I hold the rocks, one in each hand. It is the only thing to console me.
In the play, Kalyan Ong speaks, sings, and dances to tell us stories that pays tribute to refugees, immigrants, and the traumas passed down within families. Kalyan Ong said working on this project allowed her to explore her connection to her family, legacy, and the countries of her father's birth.
As I started investigating the letters and as I started figuring out what my play was, I started realizing that I could also channel my relatives, my ancestors through Shakespeare. And so the play is also about that, about understanding what it is to be Cambodian, maybe perhaps, what it is to be an artist, a Cambodian artist.
Very sincerely yours, Chinary.
The second daughter, she obtained a PhD a few years ago as a clinical psychologist. She's working at VA Long Beach. She could figure out how to open the door scientifically in the field of psychology by doing research and contact with the Cambodian community. And so again, she's following the same boat as her big sister. She needs to earn it. It's not by nationality or by blood. Really, the culture is not a free ride.
Culture is nurture, not nature.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. Yeah, precisely. And the responsibility again and again is the adults inventing and updating curriculum from time to time and teach them at home as parents. I failed to do some decades ago.
They seem to be doing fine.
They're doing fine.
So now we come to the last section of this interview, which is on your plan with Cambodia. What's next for you? Do you have any plan to do anything in Cambodia?
Yes, I'm hoping to engage much more with the Royal University of Fine Arts, nurture a handful of young composers in that department who actually utilizing Western instruments, but still somewhat maintaining influences of their own culture and so forth. Yeah.
Composition, I've been reading about it. It seems like the Cambodian composition study, it's oral. It's not structured at the Western one. Is it true?
The traditional sense, yes.
Yeah, we don't have books, we don't have any structure that teaches, oh, this is how to play the neat systematically.
Right. That's how I teach traditional musicians in Siem Reap. I never taught them the notation.
It's orally just telling this is how to do it.
That's right, that's right. And I also explained to them that imagine centuries ago or so, when Kait Mon, one of the famous pieces in the Penpit ensemble, when Kait Mon was composed, I think it was by one master. Okay. Then I also went on to say, at the same breath, I said, today we'll compose together a new Kait Mon or whatever. We discuss, we have a seminar, We have instrument in front of us. You guys play it and so forth, and then we discuss what's the problem and so forth. And once in a while, we refer back to the tradition. And right now there is some push to move forward to become a little more outgoing, a little more avant-garde, if you will, and so forth. And I never block that. I let them do it. I'm just observing it.
Last question. We are a young population. A lot of people are still under 30, 60, 70%. What is your message to the young artists in Cambodia, young musician, as you have a lot of experience doing music in this industry, trying to revive your own culture? What do you want to say to them, the young artists?
I think one word will not surface here. I think, again, they need to know that their tradition before they create a new tradition or new culture or transform the new culture. And also before the door continue to be wide open globally. And they need to be sincere and honest to their feelings. It's very important. You are not only looking outward and what could be learned and so forth, but don't forget that another 50% is the intangible. It is your feeling, which is not yours. When you go deeper, you hit on archetypal type of dimension that could be shared globally. Okay, it's not because you're Cambodian, you're American, and so forth. And so the sincerity has to be there. Without the integrity and sincerity, the art will not speak well. It's only being over-influenced from other culture and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chinary for inviting us here to your home, basically in San Diego. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and we got a chance to speak with your family and go into your house and go to your office. And I'm just glad that we could share your stories.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay.